Good morning on this Sunday, April 18th, and welcome to the Georgia Gang. You would think 2022 is upon us, considering all of the campaign announcements from Senate to Governor and Attorney General, just to name a few. Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger points to a nonpartisan report that ranks Georgia in the top tier when it comes to voting access. And the state could soon have a new street racing law, but will it work? Phil, Theron, Kathy are all here, but so is Martha Zoller. The debate and discussion begin right now.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia Gang starts now.
Our top story is one of the reasons Janelle King is taking a leave of absence from the Georgia Gang. Her husband, Calvin, just one of the people this week to announce he's running for U.S. Senate. The race for 2022 is underway. Republican Calvin King announced Monday his bid for U.S. Senate. The Air Force Academy graduate released a statement saying career politicians, woke corporations, and the cancel culture are all empowered while our families and small businesses are left to pay the price. Another veteran, Republican Latham Sadler, announced Thursday he's also making a run for U.S. Senate. He joined the Navy after 9/11 and served as Director of Intelligence Programs on the National Security Council in the Trump White House.
We don't have a U.S. Senator on the Armed Services Committee. And as you know, Georgia is a huge pro-military state with 11 military institutions, one of the state's largest employers. And so I want to represent us on the national security front, one. Two, economically.
Other Republicans are also considering a run, including former Congressman Doug Collins, former Senator Kelly Loeffler, and Congressman Buddy Carter. The person who wins the Republican primary will need quite a hefty war chest. The campaign of Democratic incumbent Raphael Warnock announced this week he's raised almost $6 million this past quarter. We should mention again, Janelle is taking a leave of absence. We are hoping she returns, but that, of course, will also depend on the outcome of the race. Martha, since you're one of the panelists who will be filling in for Janelle, we'll start with you. What do you think Republicans have to do to defeat Raphael Warnock? It won't be easy.
Well, I think they need to be focused on issues. And if you talk about issues related to education or security or those kinds of things, it is certainly those issues that Republicans still win on. And I think that that's what's going to happen here with these candidates. I talked to both of these candidates at length since they've announced. And, I think it's going to be a very interesting race. And I think in some ways, some of these bigger names may not get in. They may decide to wait because who wants a brawling primary with lots of people in it?
Good point. Theron, we missed you last week. Your thoughts on all of this and how this is going to shake out?
Well, Latham Sadler is a person I actually know. Met with him a few times and a little shocked that he's running for U.S. Senate, but definitely knew that he wanted to pursue political office one day. And so he definitely has a pretty good background serving in the military and the Navy, coming from the Trump administration that may help him in some ways, may hurt him in some ways. And then I think with Calvin King getting in, a little bit of shocker there as well. Definitely he's an outsider as well as Latham, but I think David Perdue proved something to us that you can be an outsider running for office in the Republican primary and do pretty well. I think the challenge for both of these gentlemen is going to be how quickly can they get known, how quickly can they raise money. And as Martha just said, I think that you'll see those two veterans focus on the issues, but in this climate, I don't know how soon the gloves will come off, but it'll be a very, very, I think, contentious primary on the Republican side.
Phil, let's talk about that because, we know, and we've talked about on the show that, Republicans have been divided, the pro-Trump versus more of the anti-Trump folks in the party. How nasty is this going to get? And could that hurt Republicans' chances? If the primaries are really nasty, could that hurt their chances in the general?
Primaries can be a good thing over the years, and they can be a bad thing over the years, and all of us have witnessed the good and the bad. I think that it would be good, and we are going to have a crowded Republican primary in 2022, but if they unite, and go after Warnock, whose seat is up, that's a good thing. And I think whoever the Republican nominee is for the U.S. Senate will ride an anti-Biden, anti-Warnock wave. Right now, Biden has done some very radical, controversial things. And of course, Raphael Warnock is right there and mindlessly in lockstep and is supporting all of this. Perhaps it will come up that where was Warnock defending the state of Georgia from these boycott threats? Whatever you think of the elections law, let's stand up for Georgia and Georgia businesses and taxpayers. So I think if the Republicans unite, they'll be in very good shape. The Democrats have proven that over the years. Now, on the other hand, yes, it could be divisive, but the Republican Party in Georgia is pretty pro-Trump now. The never-Trumpers have pretty much hidden in the tall grass.
Kathy, your thoughts on this race, especially when it comes to the national implications? I mean, if we see that, the Democrats in Washington going extremely far left, some say they already are in terms of, wanting to pack the U.S. Supreme Court, how does that play out in a state like Georgia?
Well, I don't know. That probably doesn't play out great because Georgia is inherently a conservative to moderate state, generally speaking. But I think that a couple things. One, Warnock has already established a massive fundraising machine. If he keeps raising at the pace that he's at, he'll hit the $150 million he raised for the last race with ease, while Republicans are going to be busy splitting that. This seat is the seat that keeps us at a tie for the Senate. Obviously, Democrats want to gain more seats to be able to have control of the Senate, but they are not for a minute going to let Warnock lose this race. And so I think he starts in a good place. If he has any competition in the primary, it will be not from somebody who will be able to beat him. And I have to say, I think he's stepped into this role and done a great job. And it's just been wonderful seeing two new senators who are actually out in the community and having meetings with people and speaking out loud to the things that people are concerned with.
Martha, I still want to try to get to two more races. First off, lots of folks announced this week, of course. Let's talk about Vernon Jones challenging Governor Brian Kemp in a Republican primary.
Well, I think there's definitely going to be a Trump ticket that's going to run parallel to some incumbents, not all incumbents. And I think that this is going to be a very important race. But of course, we've known Vernon Jones for a long time. And I think that there will be a lot said about him. He is certainly an eloquent speaker. He certainly took up the case of the president on issues. He switched to the Republican Party, but he has a long history, and we certainly are going to be talking about that. I think that Governor Kemp, who, in full disclosure, I worked for Governor Kemp for a couple of years, I think that he is going to be able to handle any primary challenger that comes through, and he's in a much better place today than he was 3 weeks ago. And so I think that Vernon Jones felt like he needed to get in as soon as possible.
On to the Attorney General's race, where Jen Jordan, who has been a rising star in Democratic circles, announced she's running, but Charlie Bailey is also back for another chance to oust Republican Chris Carr. This will be quite a race to watch, Theron.
Yes, many people have been hearing rumors for a long time that State Senator Jen Jordan was thinking about running for Attorney General. She's a well-respected state senator who got elected in a sort of Republican-leaning district, now is sort of become a little bit more Democratic. And, Charlie Bailey is a dear friend, and we've come up through the Young Democrats together. He's been raising money. He jumped in the race sooner than she did. And so I also think, Lori, you may have another person, particularly an African-American man or woman, who may look at jumping in this race as well. And so I think, again, Democrats have really good candidates, but State Senator Jen Jordan and Charlie Bailey, I think, are two very qualified candidates to run for the seat.
Theron also always giving us some scoop there. Phil, what do you think if Chris Carr decides to run again, could he be in trouble with all of these Democrats jumping in?
I don't think so. He's compiled a good record. However, I think, again, it goes back to what will happen in a primary, in this case, a Democratic primary. You've got Jen Jordan, who is a very qualified candidate, but very radical. And Charlie Bailey is only semi-radical in my worldview. And so you're going to see a clash there as to exactly, is the Attorney General going to be a prosecutor or a social worker? I think that's going to be the debate in the Democratic primary. And of course, we want a prosecutor that will be vigorous. So again, I think that Carr is in good shape, although I hear rumors that he might want to look at a U.S. Senate race. I hope he stays put.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Of course, we'll be watching all of these races very closely. Coming up, Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger touting Georgia's election scorecard. We'll discuss straight ahead.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Email them at georgiagang@foxtv.com.
Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger is praising a new report out by the Nonpartisan Center for Election Innovation and Accessibility. The center released a 50-state review this week, and it shows Georgia in the top tier when it comes to voting access. Several states don't allow in-person early voting, and several other states, you must give a reason to cast an absentee ballot. Kathy, you're first on this one. Want to get your thoughts?
Well, I haven't seen the report, so I can't comment directly on that. But I think the challenge that we have are again, I've talked about them several times on the show. One is the individual's access to the ballot, and then the other piece is the accessibility, the administration of the elections. And it's the devil in the details of the administration is the problem. When you have the state now saying they can take over election administration in any county, it's difficult to understand why this is of benefit and how politics are not going to be a part of what that decision is. So we're going to have a lot to watch. There's going to be lawsuits filed. It's great to see reports and comparisons because I think that's always a good thing. But that one particular piece about the election administration is one that we're not going to know the damage until it's done.
Martha, let's get your thoughts on this because I believe this survey was done before SB 202 was law.
No, it actually was done after.
Okay.
It was through April 11th. It was the analysis. And I did speak to the head of this organization today on my radio program. And one of the things that's interesting is in Florida after the 2000 election, they instituted something like this where you could take over an election. And in fact, Governor DeSantis took over Broward County. And what we saw from Florida was, a very easy early vote that went very smoothly compared to where they had been in the past. But this group is very interesting because they think Georgia ranks very high as far as accessibility, even taking in consideration House Bill 202. But the thing they warn about related to House Bill 202 is the drop boxes. That's the thing they have the most concern about, how they were done in the pandemic world and how they were done in SB 202. But again, they based on turnout and analysis and the law and how that would factor in and how they factor in accessibility. It's nice to see an outside group that said they did this whole study because of all the misinformation about Georgia. And they're a nonpartisan group. And, really, it's a great study to look at if you really want to look at the data.
Theron, feel free to comment on the study, but also, at the time of this taping, several of the folks possibly calling for a boycott over the new voting law have said not yet. They want other companies to come out strong against the law like Coca-Cola and Delta did. And if they don't, they'll call for the boycotts. This week, of course, we saw the director of the movie Emancipation, starring Will Smith, pull out of Georgia over the law. Do you think that this is a sign of what's to come? And in your eyes, is it justified?
Well, I want to thank Martha, my friend, for coming on here and being sort of grounded in the facts. And I totally agree with her also giving us a full circle view of this report, because it does point out what I've been saying, Lori, for a long time, that I thought the reduction of the drop boxes, putting them inside, not outside where people could access them, not extending the hours which we had the opportunity to do so during the elections was going to be something that legally was going to be challenged. But as far as the boycotts, Lori, the one thing that I'm happy about is that I'm one of many people that don't support the boycott, but at least these pastors, these organizations, and these corporate leaders are actually talking. My sources are telling me that there were some good conversations that happened last week and will continue to go on. I do think that everyone wants to figure out a way to support the legal path forward, but also the corporations are now talking about putting some money towards maybe voter education to make sure that the people who are going out to vote this year understand what the new law is and sort of the restrictions and some of the things that they've previously been able to do that they won't be able to do moving forward. And then as far as the pullout of the movie with Will Smith and Anton Fuqua, I think that's just some of the things that are more to come, Lori, because I think that this Senate Bill 202, a lot of folks feel that it restricts voting, and you're going to see corporate leaders and movie industry people continue to speak out. So I think this is just one of many more probably movies to be pulled away from the state if we don't get our acts together.
Hate to hear that. Phil, weigh in here.
Well, I think that it's been documented that there are many other states that have far more restrictive election laws. Liberal New York, for example, I pointed out last week, Colorado. But I'm particularly disturbed, and every Georgian ought to be disturbed, regardless of their politics, about this smear against Georgia, that it's systematic racism and Jim Crow and all of this. It has nothing to do with the bad old days of segregation. This is not the 1950s. And I wish that Stacey Abrams would back away from that like she's backing away from boycotts. Senator Raphael Warnock needs to stop saying that. It's very divisive. It's untrue. And I would respond to Kathy. You know, one reason in this new elections reform that a state would take over a failing county, counties run the elections in Georgia, look no further than Fulton County. Even the leading Democrat on the Fulton County Elections Board, called the elections director, Richard Barron, incompetent, a mismanager. He was fired, and yet the Democrat-controlled Fulton County Commission overruled their own elections board. Now, what a mess. We know, all of us on this panel know, that Fulton County is dysfunctional every election cycle. The state needs to take over a dysfunctional county.
Kathy, last word on this, about 30 seconds.
Well, I'd like to see the state having spent a little time requiring the Secretary of State to assume responsibility for training and administration of all the counties so that everybody started with a level playing field. But that's not what happened. It became a pick and choose which counties any political body thinks is dysfunctional, and we can have that conversation. And Lori, if we do get a chance to talk a little bit about the business community, I'd like to talk about that at another time if I can.
Oh, go ahead. I'll give you like 30 seconds to weigh in on that then.
Okay, well, here's the deal. Republicans who are in charge of Georgia continue session after session to appeal to their base by finding ways to divide and conquer people and not address the concerns of Georgians, healthcare being just one of those things. And the business community, I think, nationwide is just desperate to have these culture wars stop and have us get together on things like the infrastructure package that Biden has proposed so that we can move forward as a country and not have corporations having to focus on, how to smooth the water so their customers, employees can do business together.
All right. Good perspective, everybody. Thank you. Coming up, a new bill could put the brakes on street racing, but how effective will it be? And why is there some opposition? That discussion straight ahead.
Join the discussion on the Georgia Gang Facebook page and watch past episodes on the Georgia Gang YouTube channel.
Governor Brian Kemp's office says it is reviewing the bill aimed at cracking down on street racing. It would allow authorities to suspend the driver's licenses of offenders for up to a year, and they could face fines of up to $5,000. Repeat offenders could also face felonies. Phil, what do you think about this?
Well, I think it's a fine law, but you make a good point, and that is, will it be enforced in certain jurisdictions? You've got, in the city of Atlanta, for example, a very permissive mayor, Keisha Lance Bottoms. We've talked on this show before. I've actually documented a case where I talked with a police officer that was in his car with his lights flashing, and the street racer races around him yelling obscenities, and he's told to stand down and do nothing. What kind of message does that send? You've got some permissive DAs that are announcing they won't prosecute. You've got some of the community leaders around the state saying, let them blow off steam. No, we've got to enforce the law. And when you undermine authority of law enforcement like this, it's just a bad recipe for more violent crimes.
Kathy, opponents say this will only lead to young people having criminal records and that this is about race when you boil it all down.
Well, I think we do have to be really careful about what the penalties are, right? If you take a driver's license away or you take a car away from somebody, you probably, ending their ability to get to work on time. And then there's this cascade, and we've seen the effects of that in particularly historically black and brown communities here and across the country. So we're trying to figure out, how do you do that? I think there's, some way to do restorative justice, having people, work, in hospitals where people, who have suffered tragic accidents and understand the repercussions of this behavior. But, I also want to make sure that, what we're really doing is additive, that the police department really doesn't have the tools already to do what they need to do. It's tough, but the street racing has to stop. It's incredibly dangerous. It's scary to folks in neighborhoods, and we've got to find a way to get a handle on it. I'm not sure this is going to do it, though.
I'm thinking everybody agrees on that. Theron, Phil had mentioned Mayor Bottoms, and she's also trying to crack down on speeders by installing signs all over the city, setting the speed limit at 25 miles per hour. But these aren't just aimed at those involved in street racing, because they're not really paying attention to the signs, I assume.
Yeah, this is something that was reported this week that has been in the works since February. And so I think Mayor Bottoms has heard a lot of complaints from people in neighborhoods, but also on busy streets in the city, that the speed limits are just too high. And so I think going down to 25 miles per hour in certain areas is a good thing. But I think, I would wait and see actually what sort of the metrics that they're using, because there are some streets that I don't think that you can go down to 25 miles per hour, but definitely in neighborhoods or streets that are close to neighborhoods. This is all about her trying to make sure that Atlanta is doing their part to make this a safer city. And particularly, as you mentioned, with street racing, which I do think that the new law basically says that they will give people tickets who are cited for reckless stunt driving. But this is something I think too, to make sure that we keep children at play safe, and make sure that people who want to walk and ride their bikes feel like cars are not going too fast.
Martha, I want to switch gears because I want to get to one really big story that happened in a big development. SK Innovation settled and came to an agreement with LG Energy. So this big battery plant in Commerce, Georgia will go forward. And excuse me, I want to point out the fact that all parties worked together on this. You had Governor Brian Kemp, you had Economic Development Commissioner Pat Wilson, you also had Senators Warnock and Senator Warnock and Senator Ossoff, excuse me. But what do you know about how this all played out? And it's really great news, and will bring a ton of jobs to Georgia.
Well, I think they worked very closely on it. It was something that we were following, obviously being very close to the area from Friday into Sunday and into Monday. And I think this really solidifies the position that Senator Ossoff is trying to create for himself as being the go-to person between the Republican majority in Georgia and the Biden White House. And I've been watching this for the last number of weeks, and interviews that I've done with him, as well as the statement that he made, the press conference he had after the SK decision. But this is a great decision for Northeast Georgia, because this is a lot of jobs. They're high-paying, high-tech jobs, and they're not going away. So I do think you should watch, though. If you go back and you listen to the interview that I did with Senator Ossoff, as well as look at the press conference, he is positioning himself sort of the way Sanford Bishop was between the Republicans and the Obama White House. He's trying to do that between the Republican majority and the Biden White House.
All right, interesting perspective. Thank you all. Coming up, winners and losers. Stay tuned.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
I just want to start off by saying that our prayers, our thoughts are with Jovita Moore, the WSB-TV news anchor who is undergoing brain surgery at the time of this taping. We wish her all the best. I worked with Jovita for so many years. She's a strong woman. She's a strong mother. And so our hearts are with her as she continues this battle. And we hope everything works out and everything is benign. Jovita, we're thinking of you. All right, over to Martha. We'll start with you.
My winner of the week is Insurance Commissioner John King. He is the future of the Republican Party. He came to Gainesville last week, and he had a room brought to tears of Hispanic business leaders that had someone speaking their language to them. He is just my winner of the week. And my loser of the week is Will Smith. He's moved this movie to Louisiana, where they don't have no excuse absentee balloting.
Theron, over to you.
Laura, I definitely want to add my thoughts and prayers for Jovita Moore. So definitely, Jovita, we wish you a speedy recovery and a successful surgery. Also want to make Michael Collins a winner this week. He was a longtime chief of staff for Congressman John Lewis over 20 years, and he is now the special assistant to Vice President Kamala Harris and the director of public engagement and intergovernmental affairs. So big shout out to Michael on this new job. Also, Donnie Turner, who is a person from Atlanta, went to Spelman and has a lot of degrees, law degree, and went to Howard. She's now the new legislative director for Senator John Ossoff, so I want to give her a big shout out. And then lastly, Joel Thibodeau and his wife Stacy met Joel this week, and they're big viewers of the show. Just want to say hello to them.
All right, hi. And Kathy?
My winners are Taifa Butler, who's the executive director of the Georgia Budget and Policy Institute. She just announced that she's going to become the CEO of the national policy think tank, Demos. Great for her, big loss for Georgia, but we're excited to see what she does. And then the other winner is Margie Stagmeyer and the Star C Corporation. They've been at the forefront of affordable housing. They started with, I think, $50,000 to do rent relief. They're now up to $6 million raised, and they're operating in 14 counties. It's really amazing the work that they've done.
All right, Phil, we got about 45 seconds.
Okay, my winner is Hank Huckabee. He sadly passed away at age 79, and he was chancellor of the university system, worked under Democrat and Republican governors in the state government, and a great legacy there. And also my losers are Senators Ossoff and Warnock of Georgia. They are saying virtually nothing about the illegal immigration influx and the human trafficking problems under the Biden administration. They need to speak out and do the right thing.
All right, thanks everybody. And Martha, thank you so much for filling in. We appreciate it. We'll hopefully see you again soon. And thank you everybody for watching. We will see you again next week. Bye-bye.